special time. I'm speaking mostly about the fact that we're on day 19 of the 50-step program we're on. Some people are on the 12-step program. I'm sure we could all use that as well. But the Torah prescribes a 50-step program called Sfiras HaOmer, where we have to climb out of our Mitzrayim, so to speak, and reach up to the mountain of Har Sinai. Metaphorically, this is what we're doing. We're trying to climb out, up and up and up till the point where we can be high enough on the mountain to receive the Torah. So obviously, there are proper steps, and many people will tell you different things, and I'm going to suggest a few, but there's an old expression, Tein l'chacham v'yech kam od. Give over an idea to a chacham, and he'll become even smarter. Which doesn't mean from what you said he'll become smarter. That's true also, but you don't need to say that. That if I teach you something, you became a bit smarter. But it means it's like a seed. If you give someone a bit of wisdom, and he's a wise man to begin with, then he'll take that and he'll build on it, and he'll become even wiser. He'll go the next few steps. It's like the torch in the Olympics, that they hand it to the next guy, and he runs up even higher till they get to wherever it is over there. I remember when it was Mexico City. Does that show my age? Okay.
1968.
Yeah, that's all. It's 1960. Yeah.
So, the good thing about that, it was a very high, it's a very high city. So it's a good mashal. So if I'm going to give you a few ideas, I'm sure you have a lot of ideas that you could tell me. Maybe after the shir, give me your ideas, and you'll help me become a bit wiser. In the meantime, the beauty of the Torah is that each person can help the other, which, by the way, I heard is a nice idea, even though the time we're in is not only a beautiful time of climbing higher and trying to reach a plateau from which we can receive the Torah properly, but it's also a bit of a sad time, as we know, that a whole lot of halachas about not playing live music and no weddings and so on and so forth till Lag BaOmer, for whatever reason. The Lag BaOmer is a different day, but basically these were times when people were nifter. Large numbers of Talmidei Chachamim were nifter. 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva were nifter. Very sad time. As when anyone dies, we're very sad, but to commemorate each year the 24,000 means that it was a very big clap against Klal Yisrael's integrity. So, when the Gemara talks about this story, that 24,000 Talmidim died, which is what most people know, 24,000, the actual Gemara doesn't say 24,000. The actual Gemara says,
12,000 pairs.
12,000 pairs, right? 12,000 chavrusis. And part of the reason, obviously, is because of the analysis of why they died. One of the reasons that's given why they died is because they weren't honoring each other properly. Which doesn't just mean to stand up when someone walks in the door, which is all nice and it's well and good. But I know someone particularly who quote-unquote honors me, but I always feel belittled when I'm in his presence. It can happen that somebody uses the laws of honoring to make you feel stupid, right? There are people who are actually professional belittlers. We all know our fair share of them, I'm sure. So, it's not just the formal honoring, which, as I said, doesn't always work. It sometimes actually works to the opposite extreme. It's an internal feeling. It's an internal attitude towards each other. I know when I'm with someone who really cares about me and really does honor me on an internal basis, I always feel uplifted. Usually like it's a great rabbi or something who hardly even knows me, but you still feel like he cares so much about you that when you leave his presence, you feel like it's like, you know, you have that warmth to last you for another small period of time. So each one of the Talmidim was supposed to honor his chavrusa, not necessarily, as I said, with the formal honor, which they may have done. They probably did if they were Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. I'm sure they knew the halachas. But it's a kind of an attitude, right, which often presents itself when you say something to someone and they either accept it or they don't accept it, which is fine, but how do they deal with it? How do they deal with what you say? Do they make you feel like you said something very special? Maybe they disagree. As we always say, can we agree to disagree? But that's an attitude. That's an attitude that they may have been missing, because often what happens on a very high level of learning is that each person cares so much about the truth that to some extent, once they've decided something is true, it's very hard for them to then honor the next guy and his opinion, excuse me. So, as a sign, unfortunately, of our striving for truth is often our belittling others' opinions who we feel are not true. And that's a very hard balance to achieve. How do we seek the truth and try to strive for the truth in our own personal lives, and yet when we meet up with other people who have different opinions and different worldviews, which we don't really want to get influenced by, or sometimes it's just a view that we should consider perhaps, how do we deal with that dichotomy? That's something each person should try to think about, because that's part of this time period we're in, that if the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva were punished for this, that means that each generation that's mourning that is supposed to think about ways of fixing that. How do I fix that problem that I want to build up my own value system and my own opinion of truth, and yet I want to be able to honor the next guy? Well, one of the ways is in Pirkei Avos. That's one of the reasons we learn Pirkei Avos during this time, to prepare for the receiving of the Torah through what's called Tikkun Hamidos, through fixing up our actions, which a lot of the Pirkei Avos is designed towards that. And one of the famous sayings at the beginning of the fourth parak is Ezehu Chacham Alomed Bikol Adam. Who is the great wise man? Not necessarily the one who knows the most information. That would be a computer, right? So, like when I was growing up, the nickname for a computer was Hal, because that was the superstar of the famous story about a computer that took over. So Hal took over, so they learned to respect Hal. But a lot of information is good to have, but it doesn't necessarily make you a Rav. It doesn't make it could be a Hal, but not a Rav. So you have to make sure you have that extra ingredient, which is called Bina, right? Chachma means you have the actual information blocks. It's like bricks, ready to be built into a building. You have a whole shipment of bricks, but then you need someone who knows how to put the bricks together. For example, if you put the bricks on top of each other, it'll all fall down. You have to make it that the bricks are staggered, right? That you have two bricks here, and the next brick goes here, half on this brick, half on that brick. The Gemara even talks about that to some extent. So there's a wisdom in building. That's why the word for wisdom in Hebrew, bina, comes from the word boneh, to build. Because you're taking two separate facts and you're trying to meld them together into a fusion, which creates a new piece of knowledge, which is higher than the original two pieces. So, if Ezu Chacham Alomi B'Kol Adam, he realizes that whatever he does know, which may be quite important and impressive, but I can always gain from what someone else has to offer, because how big is my building after all? And his piece of information might be that exact half a brick that I need to lay over what I know. So you have to learn to appreciate how much we can gain from other people, besides all the other things we gain from learning with other people, like sharpening up our own opinion. We have to defend ourselves, we have to think about it more, we have to sometimes recreate what we're saying to match up with what he's asking me. It's a very, very important creative process that the Torah encourages. So part of honoring another person is realizing how much I gain from having him in my life. But I wanted to suggest a different approach, which is that we're trying to receive the Torah. So part of the reason why this would be a time for working on our what's called Beinonim L'Chavera, the halachas of how to treat your fellow man and how to respect your fellow man, is because without that it's almost impossible to receive the Torah. Why? As it says that when they encamped and they received the Torah, it uses a strange expression for the entire nation. It says Vayichan, that they encamped in the singular. And Rashi makes note of that all the other encampments, it uses the plural, and only over here it uses the singular. Why? He says because here there were Ki'ish Echad B'Lev Echad. For one time out of 40 years, they finally managed to have an encampment without any arguing, right? No one argued that, hey, your tent is too close to mine, or what are you doing putting your, the take stent next to mine, whatever, too close to this, to that. Every other encampment, Rashi says, was with ta'aromis or machlokas, was with complaining and arguing. As you can imagine, if you have 3 million people camping out, right, it was even worse than Lahavdil Woodstock, right, where it was pretty messy, right, pretty messy. And Klal Yisrael was in the desert. They were having a hard time adjusting to the new climate and everything, and the new situation, new life situation. So there was a lot of argument that went on. It's a normal thing. But one time they managed to encamp without an argument by receiving the Torah. And Rashi says, Ki'ish echad b'lev echad, like one man with one heart. That's how unified the nation was. Because they realized now it's it. This is why we came out of Mitzrayim. We came to receive the Torah. Hashem is going to appear to us in even more than he appeared in Egypt when he made the plague, even more than on the Yam when he appeared to us. And we said, Zeh Kei Livan Veu, even a greater revelation, the greatest revelation ever will be on Har Sinai. It was actually so great that they couldn't really handle it. They were only able to hear a little bit. They begged Moshe Rabbeinu to receive the rest. But it was a certain experience of Hashem, which in Shir HaShirim is called a nashika. It's like a kiss. Yishakeni b'nashikas pihu. We daven that it should happen again. Rashi says we dream of kissing Hashem another time, like we kissed him at Har Sinai. A certain kind of a closeness of a relationship. What kind of a kiss, I don't know it was, but it was a certain type of a kiss that brought us tremendous closeness to Hashem. So to achieve that, we needed to be as one person. Klal Yisrael as one person, as it were, unified, that we all feel we're together, we're all part of one body and one heart, we could receive the Torah. Part of the reason I would think is because the Torah has 613 mitzvahs. So that even though we always talk about the 248 positive commandments, which match up with the 248 positive commandments and 248 limbs of our body, and then you have the 365 negative commandments, which match up with the ligaments and so forth. It's a certain amount of our bodies and spiritually as well were matched up for the Torah. But the truth is, no one person could keep the entire Torah, right? It sounds a bit strange because we're supposed to want to keep the entire Torah. But the truth is, no one person is really capable of keeping the entire Torah. I can't keep the laws of Cohen. I'm not a Cohen. I can't keep the laws of Levi. I'm not a Levi. I can't keep the laws of a woman. I'm not a woman. Right? I mean, today you have the option, but whatever. Right? So you have this problem that, right? Or there's halachas of, all sorts of things that we may never experience in our own life. A lot of us have never had the joy of keeping all the mitzvahs of agricultural mitzvahs because we don't own a farm and we're not necessarily going to do it. I know someone who set up a whole organization to try to help people out to come out to the farm for a day and do all those mitzvahs. Very nice. But the point is, generally speaking, we're part of a nation that keeps the Torah. the Torah, it's a Torah nation, as Rev Miller used to call it. But we're not any one person keeping the entire Torah. In fact, that's one of the kashas they asked. Why didn't Hashem give the Torah to Avram Avinu? He was great. Avram Avinu was great. Okay, not great enough, give it to Yitzchak. Not great enough, give it to Yaakov. Yaakov was called Bechir Shaba'avos. The answer is, even after they went out to Egypt as a nation of 70, they were not yet a proper nation. Hashem did not want to give the Torah to an individual. It's not for individuals, it's for a nation. We have to keep it as a nation. We have to realize the Torah, as in a sense, is like a spiritual entity which is being upheld by the entire nation. So, I can't do it myself. I need you. I need you to do your mitzvahs. That's one of the reasons why Kol Yisrael Ravim Zebazeh. We're all connected to each other. We're all responsible for each other. I can be motzi you in your mitzvah. I can make kiddushrei because it's my responsibility to make sure you keep your Torah. Why? Why isn't it just my business? I'll get my olam haba. I'll take care of my business. Right? Because like the guy who said on the boat, I'm only drilling a hole under my spot. I paid for my spot. I can drill a hole under my spot. The answer is, we're all going to go down. If you go down, we all go down. Right? Like the Titanic. So, we're all together. And not only in to our detriment, that if Chas Shalom, people do something wrong, the whole nation could suffer, lo leinu. But in the good, we should realize there's a spiritual entity called the Torah, that when we, as a nation, are makabel the Torah, then the Torah is being kept by the entire nation. And that's what I want. I want Hashem to be happy that his nation is being makayim the Torah. That the entire Torah, that all 613 mitzvahs, it's like the lights on a neon sign. If some of the lights aren't working, it's not a complete sign. The picture will not be complete. If every single one of those lights light up, then the picture is a proper picture. So that's what we're doing as a nation. We're completing the entire picture. We're being makayim the entire Torah. So that's why I can't say it's just my particular Torah and I'm only interested in myself and I don't care about you. No. We have to look at ourselves as part of a nation. The nation is makabel the Torah. The entire nation was makabel the Torah, and that's why it had to be ki ish echad b'lev echad. And every year we have to try to emulate that. So that's why every year we have to try to relearn the halachas of Bein Adam L'Chavero when we're preparing for receiving the Torah. Because that is the only way to receive the Torah. Ki ish echad b'lev echad. I have to feel like one part of this nation. Now obviously today it's extremely difficult. Today everything's so politicized that even within the frum world, it's very hard to feel ki ish echad b'lev echad. Right? This person's kippah is different than mine. Or this person grows his payas differently than me, or he has payas and I don't have payas, or whatever. That's just within the Jewish nation. That's just within the frum world. How horrible it is that we could have this test. Every morning we get up, we get on a bus, do I feel at one with this nation? I remember when I was, years ago, when I first came to Israel, that was one of my greatest joys, is getting on a bus. As I looked back, by the driver, you see the entire busload of people, all the dark ones and the light ones and this one and that one, and I thought, my gosh, we're all Jewish on this bus. Like it just really hit me. And I was so excited by that. To me it was an incredible experience that I still remember to this day, 30 some odd years later. No? Well, maybe almost 40 years later. Right? Because that's what you're supposed to feel. Every time you walk out in the street, every time you get on a bus, every time you see someone whose nose might not be the kind of nose you like to look at, or who's whatever, not dressed the way you like people to be dressed, or doesn't matter. Ki ish echad b'lev echad means I have to look at them as part of me. We're all one thing. We're all one entity somehow or other. Obviously, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of introspection. It takes a lot of feeling within one's heart to come to that. And it doesn't happen all the time. Like Rashi says, it only happened once in 40 years in the desert. But that's what we have to try to do to receive the Torah. So for 50 days, we make that our program. And Hashem even injected the Sfiras Ha'omer into Sfiras Ha'omer, the Avelus on the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva to emphasize that. This is what we have to work on. And this is what we have to try to strive for. And therefore, every day we're working on a different midah. The first day, chesed shebechesed. How can I be nice to other people without any cheshbonos? Chesed shebechesed means I do chesed even if there's no reason to do chesed. And even if I'm doing chesed to someone who may not deserve chesed. It may not even be the kind of guy you'd like to help. Right? That certainly helps you to feel connection to people. As Rav Dessler says, when you give to people, you feel connected to people. The word forgiving is hav in Aramaic. And that's what ahava means. To give to the point where you love that person. So if you give and give and give without any real cheshbon, what a better way to connect you to the whole nation. But that's only one day, because you can't operate your whole life like that. You're going to give a diabetic candy? Would you give a diabetic candy because you want to give and be nice? No, you recognize it's not good for him, right? Just like I don't give a gun to a child, right? In America, they forgot that lesson. A lot of kids end up shooting their families. Chas v'shalom loli. Because you don't give, even if something's a nice thing to have, for some people, it's poison, right? For an alcoholic, you give him a little l'chaim, it could destroy his entire life. Put him back worse than square one. So, Gevura shebechesed. You have to also learn that when you give, it's with gevura, it's with the limitations, withholding sometimes from the person, that person you love so much. Like they call it tough love. Right? That's another aspect we have to work on. Every day, let's work on a slightly different type of chesed. Tifer shebechesed. My chesed should be beautiful. When I give the ani tzedakah, I don't you right? Have a good day. Or maybe todah, I say thank you to him. Or when you get off a bus, right? Do you thank the driver? Right? That's tifer shebechesed. Then it looks beautiful. Or you give someone something, did it look nice or just right? How does your chesed look? Does it look beautiful or does it look kind of shabby? No. Tifer shebechesed. And each one of the midos has a slightly different meaning. I saw now there's a sefer out there where he goes through each day and each midah and each one exactly what it would mean. Right? Now, so for some of us it's a bit hard to work on all those little subtleties in chesed and then subtleties in gevura. Gevura sheba gevura. Gevura means I'm going to restrain myself. Like Yaakov, like Yitzchak Avinu was tying himself up. He's gevura. I don't want to move even 1 inch and be a puzzle korban. That's gevura. Holding yourself in, right? Like a tough guy. But sometimes you need to do it to the nth degree, gevura sheba gevura. And sometimes you have to have chesed sheba gevura. Sometimes you have to give in order to work on your withholding yourself, right? Let's say you want all the food for yourself. You say, no, I'm going to give him. That's a way of withholding myself from eating the entire thing, because I at least gave one piece of the pie to, right? There's different ways of doing gevura. There's different ways of doing chesed. And each one of them is a whole world, the truth is. That's why every year we work on it again and again and again. But the idea is certainly there, that we have to work on our midos, and it's not just a matter of saying, oh, I want to be nice to the guy next to me. Think about how the guy next to you bothers you, and if he really does bother you, how can you overcome that? How can you look at his face and you see this, this kind of nose that I always hated that kind of nose, right? I know a certain kind of a nose that I always hate. That nose. I don't know why. I mean, maybe because I think Nixon had that kind of a nose or something, right? Got me on the road to hatred, right? So now I see that kind of a nose, like, oh my gosh, it's that kind of a guy, which is not necessarily true. Maybe Nixon was that kind of a guy with that kind of a nose, but who says this guy is, right? So I have to be a little bit more flexible to say, maybe this guy's a fantastic guy, right? Nobody knows till they find out who he is. I once had a very good friend, a very close friend, who had a hearing aid. And I remember when I first saw this guy, not only the fact that he had, I think, 2 hearing aids actually, but also the fact that he talked a bit differently. People who don't hear so well, they actually talk differently, and they don't always hear what you say, and then sometimes they do things that, because they have to compensate, that seem a bit strange. I actually thought this guy was a bit mentally challenged, unfortunately. And then he turned out to be one of my best friends ever. I remember going to his chasana and just feeling the greatest simcha. Because when I finally got to know the guy was an amazing guy. He was really amazing. Yes, he had the limitations he had, which put me off. But luckily, we ended up learning together, and I started to appreciate some of the problems he goes through, and needed help, and we were davening for him. I was trying to find him a shidduch even, and so on and so forth. That brought us much closer together. I was able to overcome that visual impediment that had made me feel distant from him. And that's why we have to try so hard, because it's not just a big mitzvah, which it is, v'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, of loving each person as if yourself, but it's also, this is how we receive the Torah. There's no other way to receive the Torah. It has to be ki ish echad b'levecha, because the Torah is not for an individual. The Torah is for a nation. And that's why it's so important to share your Torah with others. You learn something here, go and share it with someone. It's not a private possession, right? It actually says one should never learn on condition not to teach, or only on condition to learn. We have to try to learn on condition to teach. That's one of the conditions of learning. That's one of the things that makes us learn properly. So we're on a step-by-step system. We're trying, if we use the system of the midas of each day being a slightly different midah, or the 48 ways, which is also very important to try to change yourself slowly. Miyut shena, miyut achila, right? 48 ways are very interesting. Some of them have nothing to do with learning. You say, how's this going to help me learn? Right? Because each one is sort of shaping me into a slightly nicer person, a slightly better person, a slightly more spiritual person. And therefore, eventually, if I'm able to try with each one, even if it's a small increment by increments, a little bit by bit, eventually it can make a dent in our character traits. And that's what Rabbi Akiva himself learned. That's maybe why the Talmidim were judged so harshly. Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, well, what was Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva was an Amma Aretz till the age of 40. And only because his girlfriend told him, no way, my dad doesn't let us have anything to do with each other if you're going to be an Amma Aretz. I'm not going to have anything to do with you if you don't sit down and learn. And he said, and he didn't know if he could do it. Me, learn? I'm not a guy who could learn. This head? Nah. This head is like a rock. So he went walking. Right? He went on tiyul. Right? He said, I'm good at walking. Let me go walk. So he walked and walked. He was a road son, right? So he was very good at walking. He walked, and what did he see eventually? A place where the water was dripping on the rock in a fairly constant way. But just one drop at a time, nothing big. And he looked down and he saw there's a hole in the rock. Well, how did that happen? How did those little tiny drops make a hole in the rock? The rock is hard, the water is soft. It's strange, although in Israel I think the water is a bit harder. Hard water. Right? But basically speaking, it was a miracle. But that is the point. The point is you do not have to change overnight. You do not have to have these harsh ways of like breaking down your midos and changing. You have to do it in small increments and baby steps, what we call baby steps. In this week's Devar Torah I called it small change. Right? You have to deal in small change. Small change is a very important thing. That sometimes it happens in the opposite direction. A person can slowly become a degenerate, chas v'shalom. Sometimes you don't even realize you've been indulging in certain bad habits, and it eventually becomes part of us, and it eventually makes us into people who aren't so pleasant to be around, etc. That happens in a lot of marriages that don't work out. In the beginning, they were very happy with each other, right? They brought each other flowers every day and whatever. She cooked him a beautiful meal every day. What happened? Eventually, that stops, and eventually he stops saying thank you, and eventually he stops saying you look beautiful, and eventually all these things can happen little bit by bit till overnight. It's like, what happened? Where'd the love go? Same thing with children. Sometimes we ignore a child, and then all of a sudden we wake up. You get a call from the police station. Your son's down here. Oh, wait a minute. That's my son you're talking about. How could that happen? Well, how many days did you ignore him? How many days did you let him just go off and do what he wanted? Little bit by bit, things can change for the worse. But on the good side, little bit by bit, things can change for the good. Rabbi Akiva said, if that's true, that the hole can be created in the rock, I want to try it out, right? And he went and learned, and little bit by bit, he became Rabbi Akiva, the greatest rabbi who ever lived. After 12 years, he was incredibly great, but he came back and he heard his wife saying, I'd like him to learn another 12 years. That would be great by me. And he went back and learned another 12 years. And he became the greatest rabbi to the point where Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was receiving the Torah, saw him putting crowns on every letter. He said, what are these for? He said, well, there's going to be a great rabbi one day who's going to be able to darshan these letters. And he sent Moshe Rabbeinu forward in a time machine, and he sat in the back of the shir, right, like you guys, and he was listening to the shir, and all of a sudden, Rabbi Akiva starts darshaning these tagim, these crowns on the letters of the Sefer Torah, and people were like amazed. He said, yeah, and this is halacha Moshe Sinai. This I learned because Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe was like, I did? Anyhow, however that works out, right? There was a great rabbi. Rabbi Akiva, in a sense, became even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. How could that happen? He was a shepherd who knew nothing, who thought his head was so hard, he didn't even know if he could agree to this agreement that Rachel was forcing him to make. He didn't really feel he was capable. He went all the way from there to being the greatest rabbi who ever lived. So obviously, he really had innate talents that he didn't know about. Maybe a lot of us have the same innate talents. I don't know. Maybe none of us could be as great as Rabbi Akiva. But actually, the Rambam says every Jew is supposed to ask, when will I be like Moshe Rabbeinu? The Midrash says you have to ask, when will my actions reach the level of the others? But the Rambam, I don't know where he got this from. There must be a Midrash somewhere that says every person is supposed to ask himself, when is he going to be like a Moshe Rabbeinu? I'm supposed to be like Moshe Rabbeinu? The Rambam says yes, and his name is Moshe, so he knew, right? It says, Mimoshe la Moshe ein ka Moshe. So, I had a lot of different things to say. Our time is kind of up, but I just want to say one thing, that the Torah is amazing. First of all, the Rambam, at the end of Hilchos Chanukah, of all places, tells us why Hashem gave us the Torah. Very strange how you can find things in the most unexpected places. So, Perek Daled, Pasuk Yud Daled, deed, like you deed. Daled Yud Daled, the very last luck in all of Hilchos Chanukah of the Rambam explains why Ner Chanukah would be less important than Ner Shabbos, because he says Ner Shabbos is for Shalom. Okay, that's very nice. That's actually a Gemara. But then the Rambam brings a proof that Shalom is great, because he says even the name of Hashem can be erased to create Shalom. Okay, that's a beautiful proof. And then he brings another thing, the last piece of advice in the Rambam, in the last section. Gadol HaShalom, Shekol HaTorah nitna laso shalom ba'olam. The Rambam says the entire Torah was given to make shalom in the world. Which is amazing, because the Gemara also says it's also called Har Chorev because it destroyed certain things in the world when the Torah was given. Har Sinai because it created hatred in the world when the Torah was given. But putting that to the side, the Torah is supposed to create shalom. The way we're explaining it's beautiful. Because in order to accept the Torah, you have to have Bi'ish Echad Lev Echad. In order just to accept the Torah. Imagine after you accept the Torah and you start keeping the Torah. You start loving your neighbors yourself. You stop doing revenge. You stop stealing in any even small increment. You start doing the entire Torah. How great the shalom should be in the world from that. The Rambam says, and it's not just a side effect. Like you take a medicine, you read on the thing, well, you're supposed to take it for this, but it could have these side effects. It's not just a side effect. It's the reason why Hashem gave the Torah. Let's read the Rambam one more time. Gadol HaShalom. Just listen to these words. Shekol HaTorah nitna la'asos shalom ba'olam. The entire Torah was given to make shalom in the world. That is why I'm receiving the Torah. Why are you receiving the Torah? To make shalom in the world. You hear anyone ever say that? No. Does everybody know this Rambam? No. But now that we know the Rambam, if someone asks you, what should you say? At least according to the Rambam, I want the Torah because I want to make shalom in the world. The Rambam says it's not just a side effect. The entire Torah was given to make shalom in the world. That's the words in the Rambam. I'm not making them up. I made up a lot of other stuff today, but not that. That's in the Rambam. Okay? And I was going to read a lot of Pirkei Avos. There's a lot of stuff in Pirkei Avos here. Just one more thing, and we'll be finished for now. There's another Pirkei Avos that says an amazing thing. That says that we should learn Torah. Why? No, it actually says a little bit differently. It says like this. Rebbe. No, not that one. In Perek Beis, Mishnah Tes. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Kiba Mishamai Hu Haya Omer Im Lamadata Torah Harbe. If you learn a lot of Torah, should you walk around thinking, I'm really great. I learned a lot of Torah. And this guy learned a lot of Torah. The Gemara says he knew more than almost any other person alive. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai saved the Klal Yisrael after the Churban. If you learn a lot of Torah, al tachsik tov alatzmecha. Don't think you did anything great. Don't even think you did a good thing, like a big thing. I did Hashem a favor. Al tachsik tov alatzmecha. Why? And this is important to remember. Ki lakach notzarta. Because you were created for that. That means you were created to learn Torah. And not just a little bit of Torah. He says if you learned a lot of Torah, don't think you did anything great. Because you were created for that. You imagine a car feeling great because it made it to Tel Aviv today. Oh, like if the car could talk, it would turn around when it got to Tel Aviv and said, I'm a pretty good car, right? I made it to Tel Aviv today. What would you say to your car if it said that? Like Bilam had to talk to his donkey. So let's say your car started to talk to you. What would you say back to your car? What would you say to your car?
For this you were created.
You were created for this. They made you in the factory for this. So you want me to pat you on the back and say, good car, good car. Of course, we all need a bit of pat on the back because that's just the way we are. We need to build up our self-esteem. But the truth is, learn as much Torah as you possibly can. And then don't even think you did such a great thing because that's what you're created for. You weren't created to eat. You weren't created to sleep. You weren't created to, I don't know, whatever else people do. You're created to learn Torah. That is it. And with the other Rambam, now we understand why. Because the Torah makes shalom in the world. Hashem wants the world to create shalom, so he needs us to learn to create. Okay, Meretz Hashem, we should be zoich and have a good spirit and a good